Did you know? Did you know that the Makola Market used to be situated at the current location near the Rawlings Park is? Did you also know that the Central Mosque used to be situated within the enclave of the then market? You see, the Makola Market was first built in 1924 under the direction of the then British governor, Sir Percy Selwyn Clark, to help with the trade and bustling activities that was happening in the Gold Coast at the time. In fact, the market used to be called the Selwyn Market. The Makola Market used to be called the Selwyn Market until the name changed to the Makola number 1. It's not clear when the name changed or what triggered the name change, but there's currently a street in the environs where the Rawlings Park is that is called the Selwyn Market Street for a reason. There's also a market in Victoria, Seychelles, named after the same governor, called the Selwyn Clark Market. That was built in 1840, way before the Makola Market was built. It went through renovations in 1999, and it still retains the name Selwyn Clark Market. After the June 4th Revolution in 1979, and after the execution of the generals, the AFRC, led by Flight Lieutenant Jerry John Rawlings, decided that they needed to further take care or control the corruption that was happening in the country at the time. And so, believing that the Makola Market was the epicenter of the corruption and the most kalabule that was happening in the country, at least in the city at the time, they decided they were going to run an operation in the market. In the late hours of 17th August 1979, there's a radio broadcast that warned all the market women who had their wares or their stuff within the Makola Market to go for them or risk losing it, and in fact possibly face consequences. It could be arrest or torture or whatever. But there was a major problem. The problem was, after the June 4th Revolution, the AFRC instituted curfew hours from 8 p.m. to 5 a.m. So even though the market women heard this radio broadcast, it was very difficult for them to go to the market or go even near it to go for their stuff, because if you were seen outside in those curfew hours, that was going to be another issue. Anyway, by the time they get to the Makola Market in the morning, the military had surrounded the whole market, giving no one entry. So they hung around in frustration, hoping that at least they will be given a chance, maybe some few minutes to go get their stuff, but that never happened. Now, during the National Reconciliation Commission sittings that happened when John Agyekum Kufuor took over as the president, the late journalist George Shai was present to give his account of what happened. You see, at the time, he used to work with the Ghana News Agency, and they had been asked or tasked to cover the operation. And so he went there with his colleague Alex Banning. He said that it wasn't until about 9 a.m. when a number of soldiers, numbering about 150 and over, led by Captain Pani Adi and his second in command, Lieutenant Blazraku, came to the market. The soldiers started picking things apart, started taking stuff, started breaking stuff. And at some point, he saw Lieutenant Blazraku pack some stuff, some utensils, electronics, and some wares, and some money, and put it in his own car, a Peugeot 504. So he confronted him and asked him where he was taking it, and the soldier told him to mind his business. Anyway, during the operation, tasks from Tudu and Swalaba is also around the area of not far from Bukum actually. So all these tasks came to also do their own thing, because at the time it was very chaotic. It took the intervention of the soldiers who were doing this operation to fight them off. In fact, some of them were shot at and all of that. Somehow they got to know later that these stuff that had been picked from the market were going to be sent to Burma Camp, Legon, and the trade fair. But when they went there, there was nothing like that. None of these things were there. So it looks like the soldiers are taking this stuff for themselves. Later on that day, after the operation had done, things had been broken down, a bulldozer came into the market and flattened the market, leaving only the central mosque. So that goes on until years later. I mean, between that period, obviously, the AFRC hands over power to Liman, who was then overthrown in 1981 and all of that. But it looks like between that time, the central mosque still kept sitting on the land where the demolished Makola Market was, until 1995, when Jerry John Rawlings, being the president at the time, gave the Muslim community a 42-acre land around Kanda, I mean what we know as Kaukudi area, for the construction of a new mosque. And so eventually that mosque was taken down to make way for the Rawlings Park, which was going to be a lorry park. And after that happened, the Abosokai Mosque, which had been built in the 70s, then took on the role of the central mosque. And over years, the Muslim community raised a lot of money in millions of cedis, and eventually, with the help of the Turkish Hudai Foundation and the Turkish government, they got a $10 million help fund to finish or to start the construction of this mosque. And in 2006, John Ajekum Kufuor did the groundbreaking for the mosque to be built, and in 6 years later, in 2012, the construction started, and we currently see this beautiful edifice that we see now. And so that is a story of the Makola Market, the former Makola Market, and where it used to be and why it is not there anymore, and the story of the Central Mosque, which is now the Abosokai Central Mosque. Obviously, the mosque at Kalkudi has taken the role of the Ghana National Mosque. Right. So, again, new channel, follow on TikTok, subscribe on YouTube. There's a lot of information like this that we'll be putting out about our history, about things we don't know, even currently things we don't know, some dots that we haven't connected yet. So just keep your eyes glued on this platform and just wait for more.